Hi everyone, and welcome to Warhammer. We're your hosts, Jack
and Dan.
Today we're going to be looking at how can we get better at Warhammer 40k.
Yeah, I need to.
I mean, I'm always happy to get better at it, but we do also want to cover the news element aspect of it as well.
Yeah, let's get some news out of the way first. So there's some interesting news this week. First of all, there's been confirmation that Warhammer Fest is in fact cancelled this year. And I would like to put another tick in the predictions box here because we called this back in October, I think it was, or November.
First ones. First ones.
Yes.
I mean, it's a shame Q-Fest is going, though.
Yes, Q-Fest.
Q-Fest.
It was, hopefully be back next year. If you missed this news, this is because they put a tiny one sentence in hidden in the announcement about the US Open Series and the return of the World Championships of Warhammer.
So small.
They just put one sentence in there and packed it like 2/3 of the way down the article, tried to hide it. But that is what's happening. It's not coming back this year. We'll see if it comes back next year. Fingers crossed. I would like to see it return.
I think it'd be good. Just not even a better venue, just a better organisation of it.
Just better organisation. And the optimist would say, well, it can't be any worse.
That's true.
The only way is up,
just half the queue time and everyone will have a good time.
Yeah.
More events, more little things, more stalls.
Just more stuff. Need more stuff.
More things. What else is there, Dan?
The other thing is, as we mentioned in our last pod, we received some t-shirts from Gambit Gaming.
Yes, absolutely.
And that range has now been launched. They've launched a tabletop-inspired range of really nice t-shirts with embroidered logos.
Yep.
And they've very kindly given us a discount code. So the discount code is Warhammer Pod, which for those of you listening, it is WORHAMMERPOD, all one word, and that'll give you 10% off when you check out.
Yep.
So please go and have a look at Gambit Gaming. They've got some great t-shirts there, and enjoy the discount code.
Definitely.
And last but not least, actually we've got two more things. Another one I really wanted to give a shout out to is a guy on Instagram called Dave Hammer, who is a phenomenal guy. He raises a lot of money for charity, and he's currently doing a charity raffle to win a fully painted, I think it is, or partially painted 2,000 points worth of Imperial Knights.
Look really nice.
The painted ones look gorgeous, amazing. And this is this raffle runs until the 9th of March. We'll put a link in descriptions and whatnot for you, but it's on Raffall, which is RAFFALL. But it's £3 a ticket. It's for cancer. It's supporting a cancer charity, so it's something that's very close to a lot of people's hearts. It's a very good cause. But also, when else can you have a chance of winning 2,000 points with the
really
Knights
good
for £3? Or they do deals like I think you were saying you bought.
It's like 3 for 4, or they're like 5 for 7.
3 tickets for
something like that.
Yeah. I think I bought 5 tickets for £15.
Yeah, same.
And then they give you 2 free tickets on that or something.
Exactly.
Like that. It's really good.
So it's all for charity as well.
Yeah, it's all for charity. So so please do support that if you can, and well done, Dave Hammer.
Yeah.
And the last one was a fantastic narrative event that's happening here in Newcastle.
It is.
So I'm going to probably get this wrong, so bear with us. It's called Apocalypticon. I got it right.
Is. You did. Yeah, well done. I didn't even attempt it, so I would have got that wrong. But yes, I am attending that one this year.
Brilliant.
I'm going to be doing the Trazan the Infinite. I'm going to be leading that.
So it's a narrative event. So you're basically playing as Trazin and taking a force of Necrons under his command, aren't you?
I am indeed.
So the way it works, this is also for charity, isn't it?
Yes.
And the way it works is you kind of, when you sign up, you kind of buy a character in a faction, and then they're yours for the day, so to speak.
So everyone will be versing each other across the table. You'll have special objectives as that kind of lore character you have to be. I've only picked the one because I want to see other Necron players coming along, so please do come. I think we are lacking on the Xenos side, so we do need a lot more, so please do come along.
It's organised by a company called Animosity, and so we'll put a link in there so you can find it. But if you're in the Northeast or you fancy coming up for an amazing narrative experience, then get yourselves involved.
Definitely, spot on.
And that pretty much sums it up. Not
a lot more.
Yeah, I mean,
news-wise,
we've been so blessed lately that it feels weird having a week or when there's no loads of new minis or a book or something.
Yeah, it feels like we actually do other stuff. We're not chasing the tail of it.
Yeah, we've got the time to actually talk about other things. Which brings us nicely onto
how to get better.
Yes,
at Warhammer, Dan. How to get better.
So you and me have lots of conversations about this in terms of trying to refine lists and play style and things.
Yes.
So we thought it would be nice to talk about this, but I think we need to contextualize it. And you hit the nail on the head off camera earlier. Is like this is aimed at. It's not really
just
aimed
a
at the
general
top.
vibe. Yeah, this is kind of like maybe an entry level, almost like you're starting to get a few games under your belt.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things, as you mentioned as well, a lot of things that we're going to cover can be covered in a tournament scene as well.
Yeah, they're applicable to the tournament scene, but
definitely are.
We don't want to feel like we're patronising tournament players because
exactly.
a lot of you guys will know this, or most of this stuff already. And if you don't, then you're probably losing as many games as I am.
Yeah. Maybe some of the stuff in here that we've got, I didn't even think about this. Maybe some of the stuff we've got in here won't even apply to a tournament scene. Maybe they're just like, that's so dumb. Don't even think about that. But we're going to cover it anyways because I think that everything we've got in here, I think is relevant.
And I think as at the end of the day, unless you are a completely 100% narrative player, this is a game that we do play. We play to enjoy it. We play it to win. It's definitely a competitive game. There is a winner and a loser, or in most games. So it's not about how to become a sweaty tryhard or anything like that. It's just about some ideas about things that we can consider to become better players. And enjoy competing with each other.
Definitely. And I think one of the first things that you do as a player that you have got to do is what? Choose a faction.
Yeah, now particularly if you're coming into it or you're starting a second faction.
Starting a second faction. Yeah. Hold on, we're getting ahead of ourselves, Dan. This is just an intro guide.
Yes. You've got to think about what is that faction right for you, and you've picked out a few things here to think about, haven't you?
I have. One of the first things I mentioned was basically. We've mentioned it before on the podcast about these these combat patrol boxes that come out. What can you afford?
Yes.
Now I know that might sound quite harsh, but Warhammer's an expensive hobby. Yeah. The models themselves aren't cheap. The paints, the brushes, the time commitment that you've got to do to it. So going into it, have a little thing of what you can afford, because that could impact what armies you play, because you can get a lot of armies that are cheaper but are more elite. Yes. So because you do have to decide either an elite or I guess a horde army, right?
Or somewhere like nice in the middle. So yes, if you want to play, if you're playing like Imperial Guard, or Gene Stealer cults, or Drukhari at the moment,
Tyranids if you
Tyranids in the Swarm. All of those require a lot of models, and it's quite expensive to build a 2,000 point list.
Oh, super expensive.
If you wanted to, if money is one of the main factors, look at something like Grey Knights or Custodes. Custodes, you can fit your entire 2,000 army pretty much in a shoebox. It's not, unless it is very elite, and it will in terms of points per pound, you're going to get a lot more than you would do if you're buying orcs, for example.
Exactly. So I think just shop around first, see what's around. Don't dive in to an army before you kind of, I guess, cover all these topics really, but primarily the price. Have a think about what kind of price is involved. Another thing as well is kind of, what are you playing for? Yes. Are you playing for fun, narrative, or are you playing for? Do you want to progress to a tournament competitive scene?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah,
it's really nice to see. I guess as well, playing to the army's strengths. What do you enjoy? Like Dan, for example, what do you enjoy playing as?
Yeah, that's very true. So that was why I invested in Drukhari as a second faction, was because I wanted Necrons are very durable and relatively shooty army. Although most armies are in 10th, but I wanted something. They're quite slow as well. So with Drukhari, I wanted something that was much more faster and dynamic, and with more units to play with. So you've got different. I've got different options of ways to play. Yeah, and similar when you're coming into it, like there are different ways to play. 40k, like you have armies, you very much have gunline armies that will sit back, like Tau, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
You will have melee armies like Space Wolves and Blood Angels and Orcs. And you'll have armies that are kind of Swiss Army knives like Votan and some of the Marines, Space Marines. So find the play style that suits the faction that suits your play style. Is really important.
And I think once you've found that play style, lean into it. If you're going to go Tau, well, look, play to their strengths. They're not good in combat at all.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, the crude all coming out. But their main strength is the weapons that they've got. The shooting capabilities. So play into that. And take advantage of it. In the nicest way possible.
Yes.
But if you don't like the look of shooting, then maybe World Eaters. For melee.
Yes.
You need to kind of lean into the heaviness of that. Like World Eaters, you need to go balls to the wall when it comes to that. You get in their face and do the advanced charge movement and use everything that I've got, because I don't have lots, so you need to lean into it as much as you can.
That's a really good point as well, in that there are some armies which require a bigger they're more complex to run.
Yeah.
So Gene Stealer cults have always been in a one that's traditionally difficult to pilot because you need to make sure all the pieces synergize and move together as one to try and get the best out of them.
Yeah.
Whereas something like orcs, I'm not saying there's no strategy for orcs because there is, but they're fundamentally their rule is war, isn't it? So they want to get up the board as quickly as possible. A bit like you were saying with World Eaters, get up there as quickly as possible and get into a ruck and then wipe you off the board.
I think that's another point as well. Like maybe you're looking for the complexity of it. Maybe you like that little bit of challengeness to it. And again, that's where as you say, Gene Stealer cults will be good for it because they do require a bit more thought process whilst you're playing the game.
Yes.
Where you're going to put your blips, where you're going to do repair people. Oh, if I put this here, he could come towards me. I need to kind of think more about where I'm going to place my units. So
it's one of the reasons I like Drakari more than Necrons at the moment is because I've got
don't you dare say that again.
There's redundancy built into the list, so I can make more mistakes. If you make mistakes with, if you've got big units in Necrons, like you make a mistake and misposition a unit, or say you misposition 10 Terminate units, something like that, that can be game,
True.
Because if they're out of the out of the action and they can't influence the outcome, then they're no good to you.
No.
Whereas Drakari with MSU, I'm like, I've put that in the wrong place, but that's okay because this one could go there instead.
That's fair. That's fair.
There's some factions that are quite forgiving like that, particularly if you're prone to making mistakes.
True. I think another thing as well is kind of like what falls maybe in the middle. Maybe you don't like too much shooting. Maybe you don't like too much melee. Well, that's where I would say the majority of armies nowadays do fall. Like the reason why I pick Necrons for is I like how many different types of units they have.
Yeah, we're blessed with a really broad codex, aren't we?
Absolutely. And so you can lean into the more melee kind of side of things, or you can maybe lean back on the kind of shooting with the Doomsday Arcs.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's like, oh well, I feel like a mixture. Or, maybe the toughness element side of things. They might bring a few Catans. They're very tough, but really good in melee. A little bit of shooting, but mainly the first two.
So have you found that with Necrons as well, because we've got such a broad selection of units, that you've been able to evolve your play style as you've kind of grown with them?
That's actually a really good question. I didn't even think of that. I think so, because since I've got the flexibility of leaning into the shooting capabilities, I can then learn more about, how does a Tau player play? If that makes sense. Because I'm like, I'm playing a shooting army. This is how a Tau player shoots. I've got to stay back a bit more. I can't engage. And on the flip side, again, World Eaters. I'm playing all melee. I need to get in the face. How does a World Eaters player?
That's a really interesting point, because it basically it enables you to play different styles, but also then to see the game from the perspective of different opponents as well.
Whereas, again, I know I briefly mentioned these two, but if you just go World Eaters, they don't have very much good shooting. To a degree.
They've barely got any guns.
Yeah, well, exactly. Lotus Skulls, you got that? I mean, he's just a beast, but that's just one big guy with a big shooting blast thing. But I think that does limit. If you play World Eaters, there's no disrespect for any World Eaters out there, but you might be quite limited to how another opponent plays, because if you've just got melee, well, you're just monkey braining it straight to them.
Yes.
Opposed to actually thinking, I need to position these here to not be charged, but also to get the maximum amount of shots off before they get tied up.
Really good point.
So I think Necrons, again, with the broad it's a good variety of units, I think has helped me become a better overall player. Really good thought.
So we're not trying to influence what faction you buy, but buy Necrons.
I've got a lot of warriors actually want to buy. This is turning into a little selling channel.
But if you can't decide what how is there any try before you buy type of options?
I think so Games Workshop, for all the criticism I do give them, I think they do lean into the allow you to come into the shop to give you a go.
All right, good.
They let you play. They've always got like the starter box. In there. And again, both armies that are there kind of do lean into kind of the majority of armies, like the Space Marine and Tyranid one that's there. Tyranids primarily kind of combat focused, aren't they? They've got the two Screamer Killer ones when we done the 10th edition one. So that was quite nice to get that aspect of it. But again, on the other side, the Space Marines, they got the shooting. So if you're not too sure what you feel like, go have a little play. Just go test it out. And another thing is, which again keeps on cropping up all the time. I've not done it myself, but I see it all the time online. Is the tabletop simulator.
Yeah, I'm really keen to try this as well.
Yeah, I've just people say, look, it's just I mean, how much time do you have to commit to Warhammer? You've got to go set up the terrain. You got to iron out the terrain. You got to get your models ready.
Yeah.
But if you play a tabletop simulator, it's all there for you.
Yes.
And it just makes it 10 times
it's all
easier.
online. You and me could play on, like, we could say, right, it's Wednesday, 7 o'clock.
Exactly.
Except on Wednesday, 7 o'clock, you should be listening to this podcast.
So don't do Wednesday, 7 o'clock.
Thursday, 7 o'clock.
There we go.
But yeah, we could,
whilst you listen to us.
We could do that.
Yeah.
I think friendly local gaming stores and clubs are a good one as well. Like a few clubs, if they don't have their own, like, house armies, if you like, there's often other players there who will, like, oh yeah, I'll bring my Space Wolves, for example, and you can have a lend of them, or
I've always found this community to be quite open to be like, oh well, look, do you want to play? Well, look, I want to play, so just use one of my other armies. Well, let's just because at the end of the day,
dice.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just roll dice.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the ways I'd see it. Kind of, if you're undecided, well, here's how to test.
Good.
Before you buy.
Yeah.
Next kind of area, I guess, maybe to cover then is general kind of points.
Some other general points I think that's worth talking about. Practice makes perfect, which is it sounds trite, but it really is. There is no substitute in terms of list building's important, and thinking about tweaking your list and all that kind of stuff is good.
Yeah.
Not rolling loads of 1s and 2s is important, but basically practice makes perfect. So the more games you play, doesn't matter win or lose, that you will get better. And there's a few.
What you just mentioned, kind of a brief of them. The warm shops, gaming stores, friend group, and tabletop simulator.
Tabletop simulators. If you can't get a physical game in, we do love playing. Like, you can't be face to face, but
that's it. Yeah,
it's nice to have a backup, isn't it?
Exactly.
And then the other key areas to talk about, I guess, is what happens before the game, and then what happens during the game, and what happens after the game. So before the game, we just briefly hinted on that. We want to start with list creation.
Yes. Any more general topics though? Any general points about the rules we're going to talk about?
I beg your pardon. Yes.
So I think one of the things I'll briefly mention on here is read your rules. Read your rules.
Oh yeah.
And that's only because it's not like, again, I think like people think like, oh, like there's too much to learn and such, but there's so many key things that a lot of people forget. Like I remember my first few games I had was I forgot that my Lich God had -1 to wound when you were being led by a HQ, and I was just like, half the game in, I was like, oh, I've completely forgot one of the key tropes to my army. This needs, so basically, just when you're writing your rules up, make sure that you've got the stuff kind of written down so you see it.
That's a really good point. It's much easier than it is in 9th now, than it was in 9th, 10th, because it's on an app and stuff, but it's still, and you've got those lovely index cards, but I still find myself forgetting my rules or getting them wrong. So I've made mistakes where I've got, like, on Friday I played a game and I was somehow convinced myself that my Drakari Talos units had a 4 up, feel no pain.
Yeah.
I played 2 turns with that, then read the data card and it's a 5 up.
There we go.
So I just went back and said, I'm really sorry, Lee, and I just went back and took 2 Talos off the table because I'm like, they probably would have died. That's the best. You've just got to try and make amends for it if you make a mistake that was in your favour.
And I think own it as well. That's a really good point, actually. You identified it. You could have just kept quiet. You could have been like, oh, actually, never mind. But I guess, look, everyone's going to make mistakes as well.
That's the difference between a mistake and a cheat, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Make a genuine mistake, then you make amends for it when you realise. If you realise and you keep quiet about it, you're a cheat.
Exactly. So please just
read your rules. Is something that I definitely need to take on board.
Exactly, but no, it's just good. And I think another one as well is that when you get out there and you play other people, you get that variety of gameplay. Different armies to play. Again, we mentioned like the Tau, the Leagues of Rotan and all that sort of stuff. You want to play different armies because if you get what we've discussed in the past is your little bubble meta, where you constantly play the same people with the same armies. You build your list to beat them.
Yes.
And then when you go to play somebody else, your list's awful because you're so used to versing such a unique type of army that you just forget that there's other armies out there. Because how many is out actually now? Like
I think there's 26.
26. I was going to underball that. I was going to say 15.
That's even less than they put on the meta watch list last time. They forgot 2 of them.
Yes, they did. Wide variety.
There's a lot of factions to learn, and that comes back to. Practice makes perfect. So part of being a good player is knowing what your opponent can do. And as much as anyone will share their list with me before a game, or even run through it as well before a game, it goes in one ear and out the other. It's only by playing playing against that faction 2 or 3 times that it kind of sinks in.
It does sink in. It certainly does. And I guess as well, don't get disheartened when you lose a game because you're gonna lose games. And also it's quite hard, and we've discussed this before, and off camera as well. But like, turn 1, you get obliterated. It's hard. It's tough. You feel disheartened. It's like, oh God, like, what can I do? But and again, this is maybe just how I personally see it. I see this as like an opportunity to learn, because when you get pushed into a corner, you learn a lot more, because you're actually like, right, what do I have available to play?
Yes.
You start reading, you start looking, you start analyzing. You're like, oh wait, I can do this, or they've got this, or so you start learning. For me, anyways, I learn more when I'm on the back foot, because I'm really optimizing my list to get into the positions that I need to be in.
That's a brilliant point. And if you got can you? We didn't put this in the notes, but have you got an example of that from a game?
What was it? I don't have an example. Do I actually? I think it's just no, I don't have an example here now, but I think it's just mainly when like you've got like, say, like a bunch of warriors. What's your example? Actually, you had a really good one just the other day, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. Actually, yesterday when I played Lewis,
yes,
so
what was that one?
I played Death Guard against Shikari, and Death Guard have got indirect fire, which is 48 inches.
Yeah.
And if you put the Mortarion, their Primarch, next to their indirect fire units, the Plague Burst Crawlers, he gives them ignore everything. So ignore cover, ignore -1 to hit, you can't take feel no pains, you can't put -1 to wound strats on them, anything like that. So all of my defensive stuff was unusable.
Yes.
And so he got turn 1 and just shelled my infantry.
Your weak guys, basically,
because they're only toughness 3, and I was just picking them off the table. And I
freeze probably.
And initially I got quite salty about it, and I was like, I literally said, Lewis, this is not fun for me. I can't get to you, and you're just going to take me on. I said, I'm going to get tabled by turn 3 or 4.
Yeah.
As it happened, it was turn 5, but it did happen still.
Yeah.
But after turn 1, I was like, and I got over myself and stopped being a whiny little so-and-so. Sorry, Lewis. I was like, right, I'm gonna let's see what I can do.
Yeah.
And I still lost the game by something like nearly 20 points. But I made a fist of it, and I was like, I learned quite a lot in that game, because I was having to overcome those challenges.
Exactly.
You have to step up and say, right, each unit now like is so valuable because you've got fewer of them.
Exactly.
So it was a very, very good learning experience. And rolling dice with Lewis, as much as I said it wasn't fun being shelled from the back of the board, rolling dice with Lewis is always fun. Anyway.
Of course, yeah.
So it was good, yeah.
Really good. Yeah, that's really good to hear. I like it.
So yes, I think I'm not a great loser always, but I'm learning to treat it as a problem to solve rather than something to throw my toys out the pram about.
Exactly. And again, maybe it's worth highlighting as well, because I've seen it in tournaments and such as well. Like, you spend hours building, painting, getting your list ready, writing your rules down, and to get obliterated at turn 1, of course it's going to be disheartening. Yeah. So if you are playing someone who you do obliterate them turn 1, try and boost them up. Have a bit of fun. Have a bit of a laugh. Build them up, because yes, you wouldn't like that. So I think that's my hot take of now.
Like Lewis is a lovely bloke. So even though he was bombing me off the,
I don't know.
like even though he's bombing me off the table or whatever, he's still he's in that, like. And when I've had games at tournaments where I've suffered that kind of alpha strike as well, I've only ever had one experience like that, which wasn't where the guy wasn't particularly. He was quite smug about it, which is a bit irritating. Okay. But generally speaking, like 99% of the time, people have been exactly like you've said. Like they've had a bit of crack about it. Yeah. That's all you can do.
And sometimes it's funny to laugh at how bad someone is rolling, because it is a dice game.
Yeah.
And sometimes the odds are just never in your favor.
Yeah.
Literally, you could roll ones galore, and I'd put the first few rolls, you're like, ooh, that's tough. And then like maybe the third, fourth, fifth, like 1s and 2s, you kind of just have to laugh, be like, mate, you're having terrible luck right now. And it's just kind of getting the guy on board to be like, yeah, I think I am. This is not my game.
When I first started playing again, it took me a while to get used to that, because I don't know if it's just like the sign of like how my brain works, but I was obsessed with averages. So I'd work a lot of the math hammer out, like, right, I'm putting these guys into there, I'm doing this many attacks at this strength versus this toughness, and this is his armor save and my AP, so I know I'm going to do this much damage on an average roll.
Yeah. And
then you'd roll like a bunch of 1s, 2s, and 3s, and like you get nowhere near that, and you'd get so annoyed, like, why aren't the dice doing what they're meant to do?
This is like a blessing in disguise, because I can't do that on the fly. So like I'm not very good at math doing it. So me not knowing what the averages are, probably better. Yeah. To be like, I get like 4 1s. I'm like, oh, this is good, and then the opponent's like, oh, that's actually really bad. I like it.
So you will suck when you start. Everybody sucks when they start, and it doesn't. It's you have to. You have to understand that you just need to play and learn. Learn how the game works, how your units work, how your list works, and that's learn the fundamentals.
Yeah,
and then you can progress from there.
Because there's too many rules out there for you to sit down and just learn.
Yeah.
Some people maybe could do that. I certainly can't. So you literally just sit there and play. That's the best way of learning. And I guess as well, maybe worth mentioning at this point as well, look, any tips and tricks that you guys have as well, please leave in the comments below.
Yes.
There's so much that I can learn, and there's going to be a lot of stuff in here that maybe we don't cover. I would love to know what those are.
Brilliant.
Just because, we both as a players want to get better.
Yeah, there's a lot of you that do talk to us on social media or in the comments who really know your stuff. So give us some hints and tips that we can share with the community.
Please do. Spot on. Perfect. Yes. So as I mentioned before the game. So what can you do before the game? Dan?
So list creation is a big one, and now there's two sides to this, but it is important, but it's not the be all and end all, as we've just talked about. You need to learn how to play.
And again, this bit section comes down to what are you playing for? Fun, narrative, competitive.
Very much so.
Keep this in mind, but this is kind of our general take on it.
Yes, if you're trying to play at a reasonable level, and you want to build a list that can compete. And at the moment, bear in mind that a lot of factions don't have good internal balance.
Yes.
So what that means is there are a lot of you can build your faction to be quite good or competitive, but you have to build it in a certain way, which means you have to take certain units. Other units in your codex. If you take them, fine for narrative and super casual games, but if you're playing at like we do at say casual competitive level, it's not going to work.
No.
So list building is important, and the things I think I would factor in there is you need something to score points and deny your opponent scoring points.
100%. Yep.
You need something that can hold objectives and deny your opponent's primary objectives.
It's really good. Maybe like the tough sided units to kind of push them back or contest the objective.
Yes.
Definitely, for sure.
Necrons are great at that, aren't they?
They are. The resilience that the Necrons have, and obviously Death Guard now as well.
Yeah,
They've got all those minuses to stop them from basically wounding them, hitting them. Really good kind of play style.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you need a good mixture of units to kill.
Yeah, so basically, I guess you need those heavy hitters, maybe those glass cannons is maybe what people refer them as.
Yeah, so you need something that can deal damage, yes, and because at the end of the day, while it is a game that's scoring points, it's a lot easier to score points if you've removed all of your opponent's threats.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And I think that's hard, isn't it? It's kind of, you have to find that balance of do I want to just try and obliterate them turn 3, so then turn 4 and 5 I'm scoring points, or do I want to get that toughness of, all right, I'm not going to kill anything, but I'm everywhere I need to be. I'm going to
hold the midboard. And yeah.
And sometimes it's a kind of trial and error, isn't it?
Yes, very much so, yes.
Play until you find out what works.
It was really weird. I hadn't really obviously, I'd said at the beginning I wanted Drukhari have experienced a different play style. But it was very weird for me how quickly they died. So the first few games, I was quite cagey with them because I'm like, well, I don't want them to die.
Is that because of Necrons?
Yeah, because Necrons, you're just used to them not dying.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Or they come back all the time.
Or they come back.
Yeah.
Whereas, literally the first game I played with Drukhari against Chaos Demons, I threw some witches into some demonettes and they killed half the witches. And I was thinking, that's all right, I'll reanimate them at the end of the time. I was like,
oh yeah, I didn't think of that actually. Oh, that's going to really
still in that mindset,
yeah.
So you need to bear that in mind. So some armies like you were talking about, Glass Hammer, like Drukhari or whatever, you'll have lots of units, but you need to understand they're going to die.
Yeah,
they're going to just make sure they score some points or kill something first, and then you send some more in, and hopefully you don't run out before you've scored enough points.
Maybe that's another thing to mention as well. Before when you're building your list, when you're picking a unit, what's this unit for?
Yes.
Is it one
it needs
to
fit into one of those things, doesn't it?
Exactly right. You could have a really squishy unit that's really cheap, maybe like 70 to 100 points, and you're like, actually, this unit is just going to hold my backline objective. Yeah. They're not going to shoot, they're not going to charge. Hopefully don't get in combat, but they are literally just there to hold that point. Yeah. That's 5 points, a turn. And then that's the same for, what's that? There's a secondary mission which I really get annoyed with. It's the scan the 4 corners.
Investigate signals, yeah.
God, moving a unit into the corners.
It's got to be wholly within 9 inches of the corner of the table.
It's hard. It's tough. It's almost like a throwaway one. But again, if you've got those shooting capabilities, that's maybe where you want those shooting ones to be. Kind of close by, so they can just shoot. They go into the corner and shoot down. But then it is 4 table quarters.
Yeah.
So to get into your opponent's side when you're playing like Dawn of War play style, that's super hard.
Yeah.
So maybe you do want those throwaway units, like you got those mandrakes, which are, I mean, I wouldn't even class them as throwaway units because they're so good to
they are good.
keep on going.
Deep strike, 65, like 13 points a model, like 65 points for 5. So you can just drop them in, and then they die, but they've scored you some points.
For those kind of ones, I pick like the Locust Destroyers. They are 30 points for one model, and I keep them in reserve. And when I get like the scan 4 corners or maybe engage on all fronts to be in the 4 different table quarters, I then bring them in turn 3 or turn 2 onwards, or turn 3 or turn 2. To then just get those little points.
And then if they die, they die. It's 30 points.
It's 30 points. Yeah. You know, that scored me maybe potentially 8 points.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, well, 8 points for potentially 60 points. That's a plus for me, basically.
And where, if you want some help building the list, where do you go?
Yes, there's a couple on here, and it completely depends on where you want to go. I'll start with the apps first. Again, credit where credit's due. I think, and I mentioned in the last podcast, but Warhammer 40k app has made a big improvement to your list building capabilities and the ability to export it in a very nice, easy to read format. I think it's really nice to see. So I would, as of now, because I've got all the books, I would recommend those, but it is a paid for service. You do have to have a codex to be able to access those abilities and whatnot.
So if you want to play Necrons, you can't just go on the app and build a list. You have to have a code from the Necron Codex to do that.
To build a list. I guess you could still look at the data slate on the reference, or that's behind as well.
You can.
So you've definitely got to buy that
the
one.
The only things that are on there for free is the indexes. So if you are, which is still most of the factions to be fair.
It's true. Yeah, that is true.
But if you are Space Marines, Tyranids, Admech or Necrons, our codexes are out. Or Dark Angels now. You can't access it on the app.
Exactly. So
but there are other places you can, aren't there?
There is, and I do recommend them. There is the Warpedia.
Warpedia is very good,
really, really good. Again, that's just a kind of, there's not a list building kind of one, but it has all the available resources for you to build a list.
Yes, it shows you all the data sheets with all the abilities and everything, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I think the other one is what's it, Battle Scribe, isn't it?
Yeah, Battle Scribe is a list building one. It's really good.
Really good, and it's free. You know, again, one was expensive as it is. I can't recommend enough if you are needing the free alternatives. Battle Scribe is the way forward.
Particularly when we're talking about entry level stuff, like if you're experimenting with factions or you're not sure that you're borrowing some models to try out something, you don't want to be paying for.
You don't want to sink in the money to be like,
codex.
This is for me to try.
Yeah.
All right, I don't want to play anymore. It sucks. It's not great.
What Warhammer should perhaps do is do a month for say instead of buying the codex, you can have a month for £3 or something, and then
like a subscription thing,
like a trial thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I'll probably still buy the books because I love the physical copies, but for the armies that I don't play, I like to see what abilities they have when we're doing comparisons. Yeah, I love to see it. So again, a subscription thing, or even a pay. Like obviously the codex is like £30, but if they sold the digital codex for like a £5, I'd probably buy them all.
Buy them all,
just because it's so easy to see and it's so easy to compare. And if you're versing an army, I like to see what each of the units can do. And I'm not going to ask the person to sit down and tell us what each of the units do in detail. I'd rather just sit there during his turn or their turn and just play and just have a little gander. Yeah. But obviously we can't. But again, this is where Warpedia would come in.
Yes.
Like that's what I do. If I was sitting there, I do typically go on Warpedia. Again, that's free as well.
Yeah.
All up to date rules for 10th edition. Check that out.
Very good.
And a couple of other ones to kind of help build a list is Reddit. We meme about it all the time. Yeah. As soon as we lose a game, straight on Reddit.
Go
on Reddit. I can't believe Drakari are this good. La, 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 but bash Drakari.
Yes.
But yes, Reddit is a good place to kind of get some tips.
Reddit's fantastic for this. Particularly on the more competitive side, there's some guys on there that will share really filthy lists. There's other places on social media, like I think Facebook.
Facebook's not bad.
Yeah, you can. Again, it depends what you're looking for, but there are usually competitive and casual groups for both or for a faction.
Yeah, definitely.
So they're definitely worth a look.
Always, because obviously, each faction has their own kind of Facebook page. Yeah, pop your list in there. Majority of people will comment and say you're trash, but you will get those odd people that will give you the benefit of the doubt and help you out.
There's definitely some very nice, helpful people in there. Yes,
always. And I think you've briefly mentioned it to me a few times, but YouTube battle reports.
Yeah,
I think it's so useful just to jump on YouTube and watch a battle report, see how that army plays, see how they play it, and you'll just learn so much from them as well. I think it's a really, really good way of doing it.
Yeah, the other one I think is decent is group chats like WhatsApps and Discords, like gaming clubs or just your friend groups and whatever.
Can be harder to find, but I think when you do find them, they are probably better than all the alternatives because it's like a direct message, isn't it? It's like, hey, specific gang, what is this specific thing? I think it's much better. Yeah, very nice.
Good.
I think that's like kind of like the list curation element side of things. And again, maybe we won't cover the tournament kind of scene, like getting into the nitty gritty of maximizing your points. This is just a general overview.
Yeah, there's a whole other video in the tournament stuff. We've got an idea for that, haven't we?
We do. We'll probably read that in the future. So stay tuned, subscribe for that.
Yes.
Terrain layout, Dan. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, so I think this is important because if you have this is important for balance again in a game. If you want to have a fair game, what we'll often do is mirror the terrain, which means like once your side of the table and your opponent's side have the same terrain on, which makes it fairer. And there are if you wanting to play tournament style games or games which GW considers to be the right amount of terrain, they have terrain layouts that
they do. You can download them, view them online. Really good way of doing it. Because I don't know about you, Dan, but I find the terrain layout side of things the most awkward part of a game.
When it's player placed, it's difficult. When I think that mirroring takes that out of it because then if one player is more experienced than the other, then they don't get an advantage from the terrain. Yeah,
and I think when you're playing mirrored or when you're placing the mirrored one down, you already presume, or like if you're like a shooting faction, you're already thinking, oh, I need line of sight to their back end. Whereas if you're a melee army, you're inherently thinking, oh, I need lots of terrain to hide behind. So there's already a divide between the players.
There's a clash,
so which is why I like mirrored, but at the same time I feel like it's not fair. This is us deciding, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're limited by what you have available in your house.
Yes,
not everyone has access to the terrain or a 3D printer like we do. But personally, I just prefer being told what to place. That's why I prefer the GW layout, because I like being like, oh, you can't. I've obliterated you. Right, GW's fault. Not me, not my fault. We're just following their terrain, not our place.
And there's others like ITC and UKTC do terrain packs, and you can Google them as well.
Get them all printed on.
They're often similar to the GW ones, and some events will use DW, some events will use their own, or as I said, ITC or UKTC layouts. But there's loads there to choose from, and they are designed to make the game fair for both sides, so it's a good thing to do.
It is,
and they are equally, the terrain on those is usually mirrored as well, isn't it? So each player has the same, but it's showing you where to put it to. What you don't want if one or both armies are shooty armies is massive firing lanes and not enough cover to hide behind turn one.
Yes.
So turn one, nothing should be able to shoot you, which comes on to deployment.
It does. It certainly does. Yes, you do want to make sure there's enough terrain to hide behind. Yes. And again, deployment. We're both thinking it, just as you just mentioned, you don't want to get shot off turn one. Hide your goddamn units. Don't stay in the open. Don't play as in like, I will get turn one, because sometimes you do want turn one, but it's a dice roll.
If you're dependent on getting turn one, it's not a sound strategy, is it?
Nah, for me, I personally just say, look, play as if you've got turn two. Play as if you go in second. Go in second there. Hide your units. Play it safe. You'd rather play it safe than get decimated turn one, unless you play a person who brings indirect with Morty. Stuff those guys.
Evil. But that is a very joking aside. Being aware of indirect fire is a very good point. So if you're positioning in indirect fire works in that they can hide behind a building, so they don't need line of sight, but they can still shoot you even if you're hid behind a building.
Yeah.
So if you've got a squishy army like Eldar or Guard or whatever, toughness 3, infantry, etc.
Yeah.
And think about not positioning them within range of the indirect fire.
Exactly. We've mentioned later on the list, but it might be worth mentioning now. If you're versing people with indirect fire, you might be wanting to think, "Ooh, I need to get them tied up, or I need them dead." Now, if they have indirect fire, they're most likely going to be hiding in their backline behind buildings. You're not going to be able to shoot them 9 times out of 10. You're going to need to get further up the board. Now, how can you do that? Well, reserves or deep strike.
Yes. So this was something that I talked about post game with Lewis yesterday. Was that I could have been more careful about what I put into deep strike and strategic reserve, because Tell us if we're wrong in the comments, but the way we play it is you can put 25% of your army into strategic reserve.
Yep.
So in a 2,000 point game, that's 500 points.
Yes.
And you can do the same for deep strike. Is that right?
The way the rules is, you can put
there's no limit.
There's no limit to deep strike. Yeah, if there's only a limit. So like if you've got let's say you've got 1,000 points units of deep strike, you've got 1,000 points units of reserves, then you can put 500 of those reserves still into deep strike. So in reality, you could only have 500 points worth of units on the field, because 1,000 points is deep strike, and then 500 of those points is then reserves. Right, you've still got 500 points left on the field.
Interesting.
So it is a very weird rule. I'm happy to be wrong, but go read it if you think I'm wrong.
But it does make a big difference. You can, particularly if you've got some sort of glass cannon units that you want to keep off the board.
You need them
so
safe.
You can bring them in.
Yep.
Do what they need to do, and then if they die, they die.
Exactly, but they've achieved their goal, which is the main thing. And again, hiding from enemy dark fire is good. Placing them in reserves help you with secondaries, because a lot of secondaries require you to be in the corners, require you to be middle of the board. So make sure you've got units that can come in and be safe and score your points. Yes,
and I think where you deploy on the board matters as well for secondaries. So, for example, there is you could draw engage on all fronts, or area denial in turn 1, or deploy teleport homer,
or cleanse as well.
So you need units positioned that can get into those table quarters, like fast units that can, and then die once they've scored their points.
There's like the scout move that's available. You've got the infiltrators, which work really well. Just units that can get you on the board, further up the board, ready for those secondaries to be pulled in.
So I will start a fast unit near, as close to the center objective as I can, so that if I get area denial, I can just scoot on there and score the points.
Exactly.
And that's an example, but and similarly for scoring primary points, those mid-board objectives, can you get to those? Do you want to get to those in turn 1, and can you get to them in turn 1? And also, thinking about later turns as well, but position those units so that they've got the best chance possible of getting those primary points for you.
Absolutely. So that's kind of the majority of like the general tips and the before the game element kind of things. And I think this is where the main kind of head honcho kind of tips that we're going to.
The last thing I wanted to talk about just before we move on was screening.
It's a very good element. Yes.
Yeah. So while we're talking about thinking about units in reserve and deep strike that you can use to drop in and score you points or remove your opponent's units, think about how you can screen to prevent leaving gaps that they can deep strike into in your lines.
Yeah, I forgot about that, to be fair, because obviously there's the capture enemy outpost, which is like 8 points, massive swing, and if you leave your back line, well, that's primary gone and also possibly secondaries. So really good
playing the blinder with that yesterday. Captured my outpost, got the 8 points, but they're also then denying you primary from holding your backfill objective. So it was a really good play.
Yeah. Really good shot.
But yes,
really nice, really good play.
Yeah. Besides that, as you say, during the game, this is obviously where the meat happens.
Yes, absolutely.
Point 1, I wish I'd listened to because my back's hurting today.
This one, honestly, please, everyone has to do this.
Yeah.
Sit down.
Yeah.
God damn it. Rest your legs. Rest your back.
Yeah.
It's a 3-hour game. You're gonna get tired. Sit down.
You're leaning over a table a lot of the time, so when you
fatigue sets in fast. You don't. I mean, you played 2 games off the trot yesterday.
Yeah, I played Friday night and Saturday morning. Yes, and I was feeling it Saturday afternoon. I was like, oh no,
like what have I done?
But
if sit down, relax.
Man of my age, it's embarrassing to admit this, but I often get, because I love Warhammer obviously, but I obviously get so engrossed and excited that I forget to sit down. So it's really important.
True. It is. Have a seat. And another one is eat some snacks. You're there to have fun. Yeah. Eat some snacks.
Stay hydrated. Eat some snacks. Enjoy it. Yeah.
That's it. Bit of water. A couple of chocolate. You'll be fine. And yes, I would briefly mention it's there as well. Enjoy the game. And basically enjoy how you're. What's the word? Yeah, basically just enjoy the game. Basically, is the short answer. You're there to have fun.
Yeah.
Mess around with your friend. Have a bit of a laugh. Sit down. Have some food. You're there to play. It's kind of my big ones.
It's a social game, isn't it?
Yes.
So there's a lot of back and forth and banter and friendly insults and whatnot.
Exactly.
It's you're there to have a laugh. So have a laugh.
Exactly. They're kind of like the little tips I'd say. Now I think the rest of them are kind of the big ones I would say is
mind games. Go on.
I was saying mind games. How fun is it when someone's moving a unit and you're kind of just standing there and you're just like. Yeah. You don't have to say anything. You just be like literally you can just like someone moves like some units forward and all you have to say is that's interesting. And then immediately the guy's like, what? Why? No. You play your game. You know? and you can do this at any level, I think, you know, at a tournament scene or, you know, at a, you know, again, you know, I think have it in mind as a funness element.
Yes, it's part of the fun. Yeah.
It is part of the fun. But yeah, definitely do it with your friends because I overthink stuff all the time. So when someone goes, are you sure about that? Oh, cylinders are kicking in my head, being like, "Oh my goodness, why? What have I done? What's wrong?"
That's it. All of us have got a little bit of imposter syndrome, so that you sow some seeds of doubt in there.
Yeah, absolutely. What next? Anything from yourself?
Card counting, which is highly legal in casinos, but definitely recommended for tactical play in 40k.
Yes, it's really good. But why is that though?
Well, there's only 16 cards. So if you can once you've played a few games, you get a rough idea of what's in the deck.
Yes.
So if you pay attention to what your cards of play are drawn, you can think about how to prevent them scoring those cards. But then you can also start thinking as the game progresses, right, well, he's more likely now to draw these cards because he hasn't drawn them yet.
Exactly.
So you can almost position to try and anticipate some of that.
It's a really good shout. You know, by turn 3, you've pulled 6 cards.
Yeah.
You know, you're already almost towards the 12 mark, 10 mark, you know, unless you've got rid of any as well.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, you need to, as you say, you need to start thinking, oh, the next one I'm going to pull is like, you know, cleanse. I need to start owning some objectives.
Exactly.
Or, you know, the 4 corners one, which I hate. You might be like, oh, actually, I've done cleanse, I've done the center objectives. Oh, tell you what, I might take a bit of a backpedal and kind of move away and go towards them corners to get yourself ready for them. And again, on the flip side, as you just mentioned as well, if you know your opponent's going to get, you know, the middle objective one, start gravitating towards the middle.
Yes.
Protect it, secure it, stop them, and, you know, prevent them from scoring it. Make them work. Basically.
Yeah, make them sweat. Yes.
Make them sweat.
So
it's a really probably one of the best quality ones, I would say.
Yeah, a lot of people play tactical. If they don't play tactical, if they're picking 2 fixed secondaries, that's actually easier for you to think about. Their army will be built to try and achieve those secondaries, which is probably something we should have talked about before. But it's we tend to play tactical because it's more fun.
It is.
But if you know that they're taking, I don't know, no prisoners and engage on all fronts or something, then you can start thinking, well, how can I deny him getting into my half of the table?
Yeah.
Can I reduce how many points he can score?
Yes, absolutely.
So yes, there's I think cards are very important.
Definitely.
And you made a very good point here that you can actually use the app to see what's if you can't remember which cards there are in the pack, you can use the app to see what's left.
Yes, I use what's the app called? Tabletop.
Yes,
there's an app that we use.
We'll put it in. Yeah, we'll put a link in. But there's a really good app that does that has the cards on it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So you obviously a lot of people like the physical cards, of course. So you know, like obviously, like I tend to kind of avoid picking up the physical cards in case people think I'm like moving them around. So on the app itself, you basically mark off what secondaries objectives you've achieved to then score it. But you can then go use the app to then see what objectives are.
What cards are left to draw
from your pile.
Yeah.
So that's a really easy way of just checking without having to pick up your pile, because you don't want to pick up your pile. People might think you're cheating or rearranging the cards.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Avoid that.
Yeah.
Just use the app.
Yeah, you don't want to be touching your deck unless you're picking your cards. Do
Exactly.
You really? Yeah. Just to avoid any wrong accusations.
100%. Yeah. So I really like that element of it.
Good.
I think as well, just kind of we mentioned about thinking about where to go next. You know, just whilst you're sitting there, have a think about where you're going to move your units next, because we've all been there where someone's maybe watching you play, and as soon as it becomes to their game, that's when they start kicking in and they're like, oh, right, where do I move now? It's like, oh, well, just have a bit of forward thinking. And it's no negativity about it, but to me, it's like, it's a 3-hour game. You don't want to be pushed against it. You want to make sure that everyone's getting the most amount of time or equal time between yourselves. You should be thinking what you're going to do next before it even happens. It's just, for me, it's courtesy.
If you're I think it's a good courtesy, and something that I've been guilty of very much in the past. I'm trying to get better at. But I think one of the ways I've got better at it is I'm trying to think of a couple of turns ahead.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of a strategy of what I want my unit to do.
Yeah.
So I've got a unit of Talos here, and I want to kill that tank there. So I'm going to move behind this building turn 1. I'm going to move here in turn 2, and then I'm going to kill it in turn 3.
Absolutely.
And then you obviously, as the famous quote goes, "No plan survives first contact with the enemy." You might have to change it. But if you've got one to start with, sometimes you can, and sometimes you can stick to it. But each turn, you're then thinking, right, can I still execute that? Or do I have to do something else?
Exactly, 100%. Yeah.
And then while if you're thinking about that, as you said, in your opponent's turn, then you're ready. As soon as it's your turn, boom, you're ready to go.
Already moving. Yeah. Already moving. Yeah. You're not wasting time.
It keeps the game going. Yeah.
Yeah. And then doing this gives you more time for later on, where you're like, let's say you've already thought about what you need to do, and then let's say they've done something, and then you're like, right, I've moved. Ooh, actually, now that I've moved, the shooting element, again, all pre-think about what you're going to target and such, but obviously you don't know what the opponent's going to do. They might have a strategy that might change your plan.
Yeah.
But since you've already kind of thought about the majority of your army, what they're going to do, you've got that time on your turn to then just
deal with that issue.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically you're forward thinking, which is going to help everyone, mainly yourself, but yeah.
And I think the next point comes into touching that as well, that you talked about in terms of firing lanes and charges and Overwatch, things like that. Making sure that if you are trying to get into close combat, that make sure you try and minimize casualties on the way in, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. And I think you mentioned it, like trading out, point for point, kind of shooting wise. For me, that's how I took that one. Like,
yes, that's exactly it. So I'm trying to think more about this in terms of trading, particularly with the Jakari army, because, like I said, it's going to die. So can it do something? Can it do what I need it to do before it dies?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is the two things I need to do is, can they score points, or can they kill something that removes a threat?
Yeah.
Which is typically is either more of a threat or ideally more expensive, if you like. So what I mean by that is, if I'm like, for example, I've got a character called Lilith Hesperax. If I can if I run her into a 60-point unit of Genestealer cultists and kill them, and then she dies, that's a bad trade. The Genestealer cultists made a good trade. Yeah. If I can run her into an elite character that costs 100 points and kill him, and then she dies, that's a good trade.
Yes.
Particularly if I've got assassination.
Which
is what I did yesterday.
That's another good point. Like, how many points in your army?
In army points is victory points.
Exactly. That's a really good point. Yes. Maybe we'll dive into that at one point in the future.
Yeah, definitely one to talk about when we talk more at a higher competitive level. But there is, so you touched on it earlier with Mandrakes, for example, which are 65 points for 5. If they can score me, if I throw them in a corner and they score me 2 points for engage and they die, is that worth it? Or should I save them to score me deploy teleport armor for 5 points? Because I would say that definitely is.
Is the math behind that very similar? Isn't it like
I don't know.
2,000 divided by 100?
It depends on, I think sometimes it depends on how close your game is. So if the game's really close, it's worth throwing away a 100-point unit to score 2 points.
For every, the math checks out as for every 20 points that you have, they should be scoring you 1 victory point.
1 victory point, yeah.
That's a good way of thinking about it.
That's interesting, yeah.
So maybe obviously, everyone else do the math on that one. Maybe we could cover that in the future.
Yeah, good idea. That's really, I never thought about it like that.
That's really interesting.
I've always just kind of gone on instinct, but it is. Yeah. But also some of your units, as we talked about earlier, will just be there to remove threats from your opponent or their point scoring abilities or whatever. Mm-hmm. So a trade is more subtle than just scoring victory points and then dying. Sometimes it's about killing some of the enemies to enable your other units to do what they need to do.
Aye.
But that's a really interesting one.
I like that. We should definitely cover that.
Yeah,
That'd be really good. Another thing for me, which I personally absolutely love doing, is I ask so many questions when I play.
Really good at this.
Yeah. I just love to learn, and I never presume like someone's wrong. Like someone might do something and they might be rolling, and I'm like, oh, what are you rolling for?
Yeah.
Because I'm curious. I like to know what's kind of going on around the field.
It feeds back to that learning how other factions play, doesn't it?
Exactly right. And it's just like, oh, like what rule is that, or how does that rule work? And that's only because like you actually mentioned something today about the modifiers. -1, you're on a 2-up save, that is, you have a 2-up save even if it's a -1, or something along those lines.
It was I had AP one of my guns, and the way my opponent had been playing it was he had a 2-up save on his Terminators, and he'd read the rule as you couldn't have them better than a 3-up save in cover.
Correct.
But it's not quite true. What the rule means is if you've got a 3-up save to start with, if I hit you with something that's AP 0 when you're in cover, you can't get a 2-up save. It stays at 3.
Yes.
So things like that. So it's important to ask those kind of questions to establish that someone's playing the game correctly. Sometimes not in their favor. Like he was giving himself a big disadvantage.
It was, yes.
But asking those questions is a really good idea. Yeah.
It helps you. It helps you out basically,
and I think
it's going to benefit your army as well.
The ones sometimes that are the most help, and where I would advise asking the most questions is a mirror match. So if you and me were playing against each other for Necrons, I'd be asking you, all right, why have you just done that or whatever, because I'd be learning it, and you would be asking me, Dan, have you ever played Necrons before because you're so bad at this.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, no, it's a fair point because,
yeah,
and I think you can definitely do this in friendlies. But I like to know what you're thinking. Like when you're moving and you move something, I'm like. Why are you moving that there for? What's your thought process?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's hard at doing tournaments because obviously people don't want to reveal their strategy.
Yeah, and sometimes
it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, in a friendly game, you should always, if you get asked a question, you should always answer it in my. You can't really say, well, it's top secret. It's part of my strategy.
Yeah. Big book of secrets. Like, I can't show this.
But definitely. If you want to be friendly and get a reputation for being a good sport, then answer those questions.
Yeah.
But I've definitely learned more about my faction by playing someone else better than me who was playing my faction.
And that's another thing. Don't if you like, I remember when I first started Warhammer, I got destroyed the first 15 games that I played, and then suddenly game 16, it just clicked. I was like, big brain moment here. Yeah. I know what's going on, and I just started winning game after game.
You literally feel like the clouds part and the sun shines on you. It's
honestly,
amazing.
you do. So stick through it.
It is a very steep learning curve, but definitely have a go.
Yes. The next thing as well is something that I like to do, and it just it helps people the flow of the game, and again helps people learn the game. But I always point to my unit that I'm going to be rolling, and this is kind of more of a general courtesy, but also a learning thing, because no one knows. If I was to sit here and be like, "Oh, my Transcendent Catan's going to do this," your brain's like, "What?
Yeah.
What unit? What's that? You know? Oh, my Ravengers do that. What?
Yeah.
What's that? No one knows the army, so." Say the name, but point to the unit. Be like, "Oh, my Ravengers here are going to be rolling this dice." It helps the flow of the game.
I'll often do that, and by the turn 3 or 4, and I can't remember my own units' names, I'm like, well, these guys are going to shoot at those guys,
and even that's fine because again, people don't know the names, but it's like, oh, that unit there is doing this, helps the game. And
so
it just
example again from this week was I have 2 units called, we mentioned them before, the Mandrakes, which are the guys who can deep strike in and hop off on and off the board and score your secondaries, and I have Scourge, which are guys who can pop out, shoot you with Dark Lancers and hide behind some cover.
Yes, yeah.
And my opponent kept getting them mixed up, so he's talking about shooting the Mandrakes, and I'm getting ready to roll saves to the Mandrakes, but it's actually on the Scourge.
Yeah.
So. It was fine because it's a friendly game, whatever. But if you at a tournament level, somebody would be. It's a difficult one, but it would. But they would be they would be allowed to, and within the rules, to say, well, you declared you were shooting at them because you said that name.
Exactly.
And a nice player or a decent player, a good sportsman wouldn't do that. No. But it can happen.
But there's, I guess, again, there's multiple elements involved. Like specific units have specific strategies and specific toughness. So if you were to say a unit, and I give you my toughness of that unit, but it was actually a different unit you're shooting, I could have given you a weaker toughness, which would have impacted your dice roll. So although it may seem harsh, that's like, well, no, you declared that unit kind of thing. There are caveats to it, and there are specific reasons why you need to get them right.
It's a brilliant point you made there. The only other thing I would add to that was if you are using abilities like Oath of Moment for Space Marines, put a little marker on.
Markers are lovely.
A dice or some, not the same coloured dice as the ones that you're rolling, but spare dice or something. Put that on the unit that's the Oath of Moment target, so everybody knows.
Yeah.
If you've got pain tokens for Jakari or something like that, put something on them so that your opponent knows which units, and then it just removes any elements of doubt. Everybody knows where everybody is.
Because at that point, then if you then say a name wrong, it's like, oh, actually, well, no, you know who I was shooting because I had my marker here. Really good shout. Yeah, really, really good shout. I think we've covered this one as well already, but don't give up. Yeah, I know it sounds harsh, and you might get destroyed turn 1 or anything like that, but I think, again, don't give up during the game, because it is a game and you're there to have fun, and try to enjoy the rest of the game. And again, you will learn a lot when you're just starting to play.
Yeah, and yes, it's important to treat it as if you were learning, you were winning, which another one of my amazing cheesy phrases, but it is true. I think is like if there are some games where you will get alpha striked or just spanked so badly that you just pick models off the table. You don't learn a great deal from that. You learn how your opponent's army works. You learn something. Yeah. But if you're having in the vast majority of cases, if you're having a game and you're losing, you're still learning how your army works and how your opponent's army works. You learn how the game works. Yeah. All of that is good experience. Yeah. That's chalked up as a win. The points, and particularly when you're talking about how to get better at the game, that is the ultimate goal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So it's a bit like Dungeons and Dragons. You're gaining experience, aren't
you? Yeah, exactly.
Your character will
you will level up eventually.
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah. A really good way of thinking about it. I love it.
What about post game then?
Yes. So once you're after the game, you've got home. you're salty. You're sitting at home, you're sitting in your little salt bath being like, that was a crap game, XYZ. What can you do to try and get better?
Well, what I do is message all of you lads and say, this is terrible.
Straight away in our chat,
I've just got ass kicked again.
Never play this person. Like our little hit list of people. But no, good analysis of the game to kind of see what happened. Because, I mean, you mentioned, which is a great thing, and I love to see it from people, is you came in the day and you were like, I lost my game yesterday, but I know why.
Yes.
Like, it was this specific point. It was this unit. I didn't move them in the right area.
Yeah.
They were able to do X. That meant that to capture this, it lost me victory points. If I didn't do that, it would have been. And again, knowing that is such a good learning way.
Yes, exactly. It makes a big difference. And now I'm thinking, right, I made two key mistakes, which probably cost me the game. And if I can get them right next time, I might be in with a fighting chance.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we talked about. That feedback loop. You've got to sit yourself down and say, okay, did you? You can't really. Sometimes the dice will betray you, but you can't blame the dice. You've got to think like, what did my opponent do well that I could emulate? What did I do well that I need to repeat? And then what did I do wrong that I need to get better at?
Exactly. And sometimes actually it's worth mentioning, because again, I'm very much the learner aspect. I love to ask questions. Ask your opponent. If you're playing a much better opponent, don't wait until you get home. If you're not going to see this person, ask them. Be like, I'll tell you what, mate, that was a really good game. Do you have any knowledge on my army? Like, what can I have done differently or if he doesn't know your army, what can I have done differently to prevent you from doing this? Now, if you're in a tournament, they might not tell you, because again, you're in a tournament scene. They've got strats that you want to get better at. But a friendly, of course, people should be sharing information during a friendly game. It's a friendly. It doesn't do anything. It's not going to go anywhere. So again, ask questions about what you could do better.
Very, very good point. And I think another one I would raise is be wary of changing your list every game.
Really good. Yeah, absolutely. Really good shout. Go ahead. I've got so much to talk about that one, but yes, please.
All I was just going to say is I think in my rule of thumb is at least 3 games, and probably 5 to be honest. So and with this latest Drukhari list, I played 3 games, won 1, lost 2, and I'm thinking I'm not prepared to change the list yet. I want 2 more games because of what I said, because it wasn't the list that let me down. It was me and how I played it. When I played yesterday. So that I need to get better at using them first, and then once I've got those games on my belt, then I'll think, right, well, actually, maybe this unit isn't. I've got an inkling already. There's one unit in there that I'm thinking maybe doesn't work, and I actually kind of chucked it in there because I've got another unit that isn't built yet, which I want to use. So, there's things like that I might want to change. But the knee-jerk reaction sometimes when you come off particularly off a bad loss, is like, right, well, I'm ripping the list up. This is
units
rubbish.
Into the bin. Straight on a Reddit. This was a trash list. But
so try and be honest with yourself and think, is it the list or is it me? Sometimes it is a list, but more often it's me.
That's a very good point, because what I was going to say, just to touch on that, don't play the same army 3 times as well.
Yeah.
Because you need to see how your army does against a wide variety. Yes. Like going against orcs, well, they're quite, their toughness isn't amazing. Actually, no, Imperial Guard, for example, let's go for like an Imperial Guard unit. Most of their toughness is free across the board. So if you're building a list, I need to get as many shots off as possible with the AP1, that gets them down to like 6 up saves. Let's say you verse Imperial Guard 3 times, you get used to having an army against that, and then you're like, right, I've swapped this unit out to deal with these. But then you go verse Knights.
Yeah.
Toughness 12 plus.
Yeah.
And you're like,
where's all your anti-tank?
Where's my anti-tank? I've got nothing. So so make sure when you're playing those games, have a variety of opponents.
That's a really good point.
To refine your list, I would say, is a really, really good element of that. Because I can't agree more. Don't abandon your list. It's probably you.
Yeah. It's always me.
Not you directly, the audience.
Another thing I think you can do is obviously we talked about talking to people, but watch bat reps or faction specialists on YouTube, see how they do it. Some of the faction specialists will have little videos on this is how to use this unit or this detachment. So they're always worth a watch.
Really worth a watch. That's how I got into Warhammer. That's how I started learning more and more lists. I watched the LVA, the Las Vegas Open.
Oh yes.
Watch them how the hell they play, just to kind of learn a bit better. Just can't get enough of it, basically.
Yes.
Watch.
And I think in that respect, it depends on if you've got the attention span and the time. Watch the live games, like you were saying, like LVO or whatever. If you haven't, try and watch good quality bat reps where that you can see quite a lot of the gameplay.
Yeah.
So for entertainment purposes, there's the channel Is It Play on Tabletop that do 40k in 40 minutes.
Yes, it is.
Very good fun to watch. Love watching them. But from a learning perspective, it's not enough. 40 minutes is not enough to.
They skip a lot of the how, the why behind the
so
movement.
you're looking at the back reps that are like 90 minutes, 2 hours or something. Which is still an edited down version of the game, but that will give you enough to show you that means typically there's enough time in there for them to explain this is why I've moved this here, or this is why this happened.
And sometimes I'm looking for someone to chill to watch when I'm doing my painting. I'll go to Play on Tabletop to watch there, because again they're very engaging.
I love it. Love
the videos. But then when I'm like, I've got a bit of time to refine my list, tell you what, get those 2 hour videos on. Let's see how they're doing it.
Yes.
So really, really good. I love that point as well. I think one thing to mention as well is go over your own rules after the game.
Brilliant.
So many times have I forgot a unit can do this, or another unit can do that. You're gonna forget stuff. Just relearn it. Get your data cards out, have a little look, be like, what could I have done in turn 2 when this happened? They had this stratagem to do this. I could have saved some wounds off that point. And also on the flip end, was your opponent, again, not cheating wise, but how does your opponent work? How does their army rule work? What could I have done differently against this army
to counter
if I versed them again? Or what units could I switch out if I was to verse this unit again? Is a really good way of thinking. I remember a couple of games I've had where people come up to me at the end and be like, I played this rule wrong, I'm sorry, it was meant to be this way. And I was like, thanks for letting us know. I don't, obviously we'll play it as it is. It was still a fun game overall. I'm glad you've told us as well, because now I know next time when I play, it's played like this, not like this.
Particularly if they're newer units as well. So the first time I ran witches, I forgot that because the rules aren't always clear. So you're looking.
What do you mean? Rules aren't clear.
I'm looking on the witches data sheet, and they've got a 4-up save, but then hidden in the abilities. I suppose I say hidden. I just didn't read it properly. But in the abilities, it says that if they're in melee, they get a 4-up invuln.
Right.
But I just didn't read that, so I went into some custodies and tickled them a little bit. And then the custodies went and just and because I didn't realise I had a 4-up invuln, I was saving on 6s or something, and it was they all died. But things like that, or again, like making sure you know things like, is it a 4-up feel no pain or a 5-up, etc., etc. So that's a really, really good point.
Very nice.
Definitely
good. And I think as well, they're always going to be bad matchups in games.
Yes,
you might have a refined list, but there's going to be a list out there that just completely counteracts you. In sometimes you can't do anything against it.
The game is designed that way.
Yeah.
I think, particularly in 10th, I think they've deliberately designed it that way. It's something that you see a lot in video games, is that they will specifically design it that way so that to try and create that sort of sense of balance.
Exactly.
So yes, it's very true. It comes back to what you were saying earlier about playing different opponents. So if you've got like my matchup with Lewis was a difficult game. If I think his list is very good. I think he'll against a lot of people, but it was Kryptonite against Drukhari.
There we go. Yeah.
So if you and your mate are just playing like that all the time, and you're on the losing end of that bad matchup, you're going to get disheartened. You need to still play with your friend, because he's your friend and you want to play with your friend, and eventually you'll
become enemies.
Yeah. But it can make you a better player. But I think but you need a broader spectrum of to get a feel for whether a list is good.
Well said.
And how you play it.
Definitely. I think that's kind of most of the stuff during the game, right? Can't think. After the game.
Yeah, definitely for post. Yeah, that's it. I think just to round things up, you've made a very good point here about the meta.
Oh yeah, I think it's I guess our ending thoughts, if you will, about this sort of stuff. Don't follow the meta. Like if you like to follow the meta, great, good for you. But for a long-term kind of career in Warhammer,
I think
stick to what you like.
The change, a very, very good player. So I've had this conversation with a few people before in the past. Is like, if we take, say, Stephen Box at Vanguard Tactics, who's one of the best players in the world, he's won the LVO before, etc. I could give him a rule of cool, shoddy bottom of the meta list, and I could play a top faction, and he would still beat me because he's a better player. So a good player can use those assets in a way that can still do very well.
Exactly. So don't chase the meta. Just play what you like.
It changes so rapidly. So I think the way 10th is shaping up is we're looking at a balanced data slate about once a quarter.
Yeah.
So those will be your big changes. Like the last one was, go and watch the video from last week or listen to the podcast. But that was massive changes to the game. So if you'd come in December and bought your army based on what the meta was then, like what is the hotness in Chaos Space Marines, like buying loads of rhinos in Chosen or something, and now that's changed. By the time you've built them, because unless you don't have a job or all you do on an evening is Warhammer, then by the time you have bought,
that's bliss, by the way. That sounds good.
It does. We should start a Patreon.
Make our full time.
But unless you can do that by the time, because of the time it takes to build and paint all of that stuff and then get it on the table, by the time you've done that, the meta might have shifted and often has.
And that does take time as well. Like getting all that. There's a meta of like, oh, you need immortals, buy 30 immortals. It's going to take me weeks to do that.
Well, it happened. I mean, not that I was necessarily chasing the meta, but I bought a unit of immortals on Facebook Marketplace with Tesla because I didn't have any, because they were really good when the Codex came out. And then GW quite quickly changed that. They made it it happened before the balanced data slate. After a matter of few weeks, they went, actually, we're changing this rule because these are just silly.
Just too good. They're still good.
Yeah. But I just bought them because I wanted to play one game with them to see what they were like, because it's fun. Yeah. But if I'd gone out and bought 30 of those and spent, what would that be, like 150 quid?
Oh, easily,
because there's five in there.
Element games, 25 quid a box.
Yeah, it's five models in
50,
a box.
150,
yeah. So if you'd spend 150 quid and then spent probably 150 hours building and painting them, and then GW changed the rule, you'd be foaming. You'd be annoyed.
Of course you would.
So don't put yourself in that position.
This is where you see people selling the mass, like when you see a Facebook market where it's like selling an entire army list. That's kind of where you kind of gauge. It's funny. I say it's funny, but it's horrible when like the list, like the army changes, and then the day after you see like loads of those armies on Facebook market, because it does suck. But at the same time, it's like, just stick with it. It'll change. It'll come back around. The swings and roundabouts. That's why you should have more than one army. Have three.
I think more than one army, or have one army. If your army is, if you're blessed with a broad codex like Necrons or Space Marines or whatever, you can invest in different things in that, and eventually over time you will have enough of everything. Yeah. So as Necron players, like sounds like a brag, but you've got we've both got. I've almost got 3 of almost everything, barring some of the big stuff. Yeah. Like I've only got 2 monoliths. I mean.
Only 2.
Yeah.
But we need a third.
But generally speaking, they're all there. So the tools are in the box. So you can say, right, if I want to, like you were saying, if I want to lean into melee, I can do this. If I want to play shooty, I can do this. If I want to play Catans, I can do this.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's options
good variety.
There.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just again, we've already mentioned it before, but be ready to lose. You're new to the game, or if you're still learning it, you want to try new things, and sometimes the things you try suck. That's fine. That is fine. Yeah. Play it, see what it's like, have fun.
And I think within that, try and find opponents who are. There's two elements to this. One is like either try and find an opponent who is the same as or slightly better than you is ideal, slightly better, because then they'll force you to get good. If you're playing somebody that you can beat all the time, you're not going to learn anything.
Yeah. Something what we've not mentioned, but something I've actually done before is when I've like organised a game for a friend, I actually say, hey, do you want a sweaty list or do you want a fun list? Yeah. And a fun list to me basically just means I'm trying some new units that I've not played before. I want to see how they do X, Y, Z. Or if we go sweaty, it's like, right, let's build a list to win kind of thing. And both of them are really good options because, look, we want to learn, so you might want to bring a competitive list to be like, let's see how well I do with a refined list. Or again, I'll tell you what, I've got this big blob of units that I want to try. I don't know how good they are. Can we just play a fun game and then let's just see how this unit does? And both options are really good.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Fantastic. Anything else you want to kind of cover in your final thoughts?
No, just to say again, like leave us your experiences, leave us your advice and comment and tips or whatever in the comments. Really do appreciate all the engagement that we've been getting.
Yeah, it's really good. Comments, please subscribe, like, comment, just get the engagement up. And again, we do just want to know how, any tips that we've missed as well. So
this is a big subject, so you're bound to have some more to tell us. So we'll look forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks now.